I grew up in New York City, surrounded by the towering and inspiring heights of inspiration and achievement. I had an opportunity to see live music. My parents took me to live music concerts and museums and Broadway and sports events. And by surrounding myself with all that culture and brilliance, I developed a hunger for excellence and an attraction to genius and mastery. Anything short of that felt, to me, like people were shortchanging themselves and each other. Thanks to these types of experiences, I ended up in two careers that both focus on developing expertise and capturing it and mapping expertise. And by being exposed to all this culture, I shifted my mindset from just being a spectator to absorbing what I was seeing and hearing. When you've heard musicians like Andre Segovia play live, or Yo-Yo Ma, or Joe Satriani, that inspires music students to work harder for hours, months, years. If you've seen Bjorn Borg play John McEnroe in the US Open tennis finals, you know that's a match that may never be equaled again. And to get to that level of play, you have to work hard for many years and start very young. If you've seen sculptures by Calder or Rodin or Michelangelo, or perhaps paintings by Picasso or Van Gogh, that causes art students to wonder, what does it take to get to that level of artistry? And perhaps if you've just seen documentaries by extraordinary people or about extraordinary people like Jacques Cousteau or Jane Goodall or Nikola Tesla, that often causes us to choose careers based on that kind of inspiration. I've noticed that when we're given the chance to learn from masters of their craft, we tend to take advantage wherever we can. And when that's the norm rather than the exception, we develop a hunger for excellence and an aversion to mediocrity. We start to aim higher. I've also noticed that the price is too high not to do that. If you're given the chance to work hard for something and you want certain doorways to open for you, you have to strive higher and work harder. If you want to get certain jobs, or get into certain colleges, or get funding for businesses, or grants, or scholarships, you have to stand out. While the media tends to focus on overnight sensations and successes, it remains powerfully true that most success stories emerge from decades of hard work and high achievement. And while money is not the best measure of success or growth, fully 62% of American billionaires earned their fortunes, self-made their fortunes, through hard work, genius, and expertise. My childhood in New York brought me face to face with vast financial differences between the low-income areas of uptown New York and the higher-income areas like Midtown, Wall Street. And perhaps you, each in where you've grown up or where you've visited, have seen similar contrasts between mediocrity and greatness. To achieve great things, we owe it to ourselves and each other to step higher. And in doing so, we gain a sense of accomplishment and we can achieve more together, both for ourselves and for others. We owe it to ourselves to take genius and mastery from rare to everywhere. There's never been a more important time for us to achieve this. Never. Our world is in crisis. We know this. We need more creative solutions to solve these problems and move forward together. We need to evolve as a society to get past problems like environmental issues, poverty, starvation, and get us over and through and past war, violence, and genocide. We need more experts to aim higher to develop their own genius. We need more geniuses to solve our biggest issues. And we need to model more of that genius before it disappears, Finally, we need more masters to plant the seeds of genius. I'll explain more in a bit. Think about this. Why do we need more of all of these? I'd like you to look inside for this. Think about your own life experiences. Perhaps you've known a gifted expert, and perhaps they retired from their jobs, or maybe they passed away, leaving behind a poor shadow of their expertise and their brilliance. Or perhaps you've known someone who was particularly wonderful and gave you great advice, and now that they're gone, the advice you get from some others isn't as useful. We need more geniuses. Most people think of geniuses as being very rare. And they may be thinking of geniuses as savants or prodigies who truly are very rare, but I think every single human being around here and beyond can develop expertise, and every single person can take that further into their own genius. They can find genius inside themselves, and they can take it further into mastery. Let's explore how these words might fit into a learning theory called the 4 stages of learning. This is a model of learning proposed by a fellow named Martin Broadwell and later developed by Noel Birch. Here's how it works. I'd like you to think of something, anything you've learned. Doesn't matter what it is. Got one? Okay. With that in mind, I want you to realize that there's chances are with that particular thing that you know, that skill or knowledge area, you're going to fit somewhere into these 4 stages. Stage 1 is unconscious incompetence. And unconscious incompetence means that before you even approach learning the skill, you don't even know how good or bad you're going to be at it. In stage 1, we have ignorance, a lack of skill, a lack of knowledge. We don't have any filters for it. We just don't know. Let's call stage 1 newbie. Okay? Stage 2, conscious incompetence, means you know that you're not so wonderful at it, right? And what this essentially means is you have enough awareness of it to know where you aren't yet doing well. You've got a little knowledge, a little awareness, and you probably don't have much skill yet. Okay, and you take it further, we'll go beyond. So let's call stage 2 clumsy. Okay, so stage 3, conscious competence. This is where things get good. What this means is we've been doing it long enough to know that we can do it pretty well with instructions. We can perform well with instruction still. We have some knowledge, we have some awareness, we have some skill, but it's not yet automatic, right? Okay? We have some awareness, we have some knowledge, it's not automatic. Let's call the upper end of stage 3 expert. Okay. I think expert means deep conscious knowledge and competence, okay? We have, in the expert zone, we have good workers. We have people who are really knowledgeable, and they're common in academics, in academia. Yet they're unlikely to be the most creative people for solving our problems, okay? Their teaching is often information-heavy, yet perhaps lacking in some hands-on learning. Hope that makes sense. So stage 4 is unconscious competence, and this means that you are beautiful at the skill. You can do it easily and naturally. You're the people that others look at and say, they're naturals. And you have this natural fluidity with it, and you no longer worry about the details because you've actually learned how to forget them. Let's call stage 4 automatic pilot or genius. Genius is a high intellectual or creative capacity or ability or unconscious competence. Your naturals. Now the thing is, geniuses may have trouble explaining details about their natural skill, yet they can demonstrate it easily and naturally. These people are often the most creative at problem solving. Why? Because they are the most capable of seeing opportunities for refinement and improvement. Right? But their teaching can be, not always, can be full of gaps. So, is everyone with me? We have newbie, clumsy, expert, and genius. Let's also look at the transitions between these 4 stages, because there's a eureka hidden in one of these, okay? To move from one stage to another stage, we often have to make certain critical and fascinating leaps inside our minds. To move from newbie to clumsy, we need introduction, awareness, exposure, and experience. We learn the relevant rules for what we're experiencing as we make that transition. To move from clumsy to expert, we need repetition, exposure, awareness, and we drill and we practice and we learn the exceptions to the rules. Right? To move from expert to genius, this one's more interesting. We need practice and we need integration. We integrate multiple steps of the skill or knowledge into kind of a gestalt, a single procedure or process. We gather these parts and we group them together into larger chunks. A lot of us call that chunking up, right? Let's dive a little deeper on this one. A psychologist by the name of George Miller discovered that we can all store 7 plus or minus 2 pieces of information in any given chunk. Perhaps you've heard this before. As we learn, we group these steps into chunks and we chunk up. And sometimes when we're doing that, not always, but sometimes, we begin to lose access to the details that are part of the larger chunk. It's almost as if the details that made it into the larger chunk, that process, that automatic pilot, they become distractions to the automatic pilot. We don't need them anymore because we can just do the thing beautifully, right? Now, capturing knowledge from geniuses who've forgotten details can be a little bit like pulling teeth, right? So, for example, I'm fascinated by the performance art of contact juggling and that of spinning acrylic balls in my hands, all right? That may look easy, but I promise you, every single one of those really wants to move far away from all of the others. Okay, so I got to tell you a story. People who've never experienced this don't know quite what it's like. I had the opportunity, as I was first learning this skill, to interview a genius, someone who was easily one of the top 5 or 10 people at this. And I was interviewing him and asking him how he was doing this. First, the other people were asking him questions like, how do you first go about this? What first steps do you suggest that I take to get better at this? Well, geniuses don't think that way, and his answers for those people were unsatisfying and unhelpful. They weren't getting it. So I asked a higher level question. I asked, how do you make all the balls move and rotate together? And he said, I don't make the balls move. The balls want to move. I just get out of their way. Okay, so people who don't have training in learning how to unpack genius might not have any way of translating that brilliant, chunked-up genius answer into action, into skill, or they wouldn't take it seriously. But I gleaned immense meaning from that answer, and 1 hour later, I was spinning acrylic balls in pyramids in my hands. Now, I was clunky, right? Expert came later, but, I was able to do it without, injuring nearby parties. So, to learn well from geniuses, people need skills for unpacking genius that really aren't taught in schools today. And that's a little unfortunate. I think it's perhaps best for us if we move past the 4 stages of learning theory into what I think of as stage 5, which I think of as mastery. During our first pass through the learning stages, we can only occupy one learning stage at a time. Think about that. Only one at a time. So if we achieve genius in some skill, and then the act or the discovery that we've lost details along the way causes us to go back and relearn some of the basics, some of the foundational material of our field or the skill, we can then achieve expertise while we're a genius. Now that's interesting. That means that while we're a genius, while we're demonstrating beautifully and naturally, we reteach ourselves the chunks, the smaller chunks. We can then occupy both competency stages, expert and genius, at the same time. That means that we can explain well and demonstrate well at the same time. That's not possible during the first pass through the 4 learning stages. And I promise you folks, it's much easier the second time, much faster, okay? So forgetting details causes us to relearn things. We can then achieve mastery, only if we've become a genius and then gone back and done it again. So that's how I view mastery, right? Both of those at the same time. Mastery is not possible during the first pass through, so we have to learn any field twice if we're going to master something. The neat thing about it is mastery and masters that we have a chance to learn from really accelerate the journey for students up through to genius, right? Hugely so. If we want, as students, to become geniuses or masters at something, we really want to learn from masters of their craft, if we can find them. All right. So, what can we do in our own lives to make use of all of this, right? First, an educator, every educator could commit to aim higher in their career, to go beyond expertise, to find their genius, and then go back to school on the basics to become masters. If they do that, they're going to be serving their students for years and decades to come. And don't stop or slow down your learning process until your peers and your mentors agree you've reached mastery. And then use that for something wonderful, right? That's one. Secondly, every student should seek out masters of their craft wherever possible for their own education, to speed up their own journey. Why would we ever impoverish our experience by going with less than masters if we didn't have to, right? So it's wonderful as students to push for and look for masters of their craft. And finally, third, I think we should begin to model more of the geniuses and the masters out there and capture more of what they know. I have a method of doing this called genius mapping, but whatever method we pick for mapping some of that expertise, the real goal is to capture, celebrate, and stockpile human genius, right? So, if we all took any of these 3 steps, we would all make the world a better place. We would retain more and lose less of the geniuses and masters out there, of the extraordinary gifts that the most brilliant minds among us have created and delivered to the world. I think that's huge. So let's take genius and mastery from rare to everywhere. Thank you.